I'll never forget the day I found out my groceries had been paid for by a mysterious stranger. But what really caught me off guard was why they were doing it. As I stood in line at the checkout counter, waiting for my turn, I noticed that the cashier was scanning my items with an unusual look on her face. It wasn't until she finished and handed me my receipt that I saw it. A handwritten note on the bottom of the slip that read, "From someone who knows what you're going through." At first, I thought it was just some kind of prank or joke, but as I looked around the store, I realized no one else seemed to have received any such notes. It wasn't until later, when I started getting similar notes on my subsequent grocery runs, that I began to suspect something more unusual was at play. The notes themselves were always brief and cryptic, just a few words scribbled in hasty handwriting, but they seemed to be trying to convey some kind of message. "You're not alone" was one note. "I know what it's like" another. I started to wonder if someone was watching me, following my movements. As the weeks went by, the notes continued to appear, and I found myself growing more and more curious about who could be behind them. Who was this mysterious stranger, and why were they taking such an interest in my grocery shopping? But it wasn't until one day, when I stumbled upon a note that read, "I've been there too," that things started to take a dark turn. Suddenly, the notes didn't seem so benign anymore. They seemed like something more sinister. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was trying to tell me something. But what? And then it hit me. What if this stranger wasn't just paying for my groceries out of kindness or charity? What if there was something more to their motives? The thought sent shivers down my spine, as I wondered if I had unknowingly stumbled into some kind of twisted game. Was this person trying to manipulate me, to use me for some unknown purpose? Or were they genuinely trying to help? And if so, how? But what really blew the whole situation wide open was when I received a note that read, "My daughter passed away from hunger," followed by an address on the back of the slip. That's when everything clicked into place. This stranger wasn't just paying for my groceries. They were trying to pay off some kind of twisted debt. It turned out that the person behind the notes was a single mother who had lost her child due to poverty and lack of access to basic necessities like food. She had been anonymously paying for groceries in my neighborhood, hoping to make up for what she felt had gone wrong in her own life. But not just for me alone. As I stood there, stunned and speechless, the magnitude of this woman's loss hit me like a ton of bricks. Here was someone who had suffered such unimaginable pain, yet still found it within themselves to help others. And that's when I realized, sometimes, the most unexpected acts of kindness can be the ones that change us forever. But what really stayed with me long after I stopped paying attention to those notes was this haunting thought. We're all just trying to make up for our own shortcomings, one small act at a time, and it's only when we share our burdens with others that we start to heal. As the days went by, I found myself wondering more and more about this mysterious benefactor. Who was she? What had driven her to such kindness? And what exactly had happened in her life to prompt her to pay for groceries anonymously? I knew I had to find out. I began to leave subtle hints around my neighborhood, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman who was changing my life with every passing day. But try as I might, I couldn't seem to pin her down. She remained elusive, always disappearing into thin air whenever I tried to get close. It wasn't until weeks later that I finally received a small note in the mail, addressed to me personally. My heart racing, I opened it up and read the familiar handwriting. "Meet me at the park on Main Street at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone." My curiosity was piqued. What did this woman want from me? Was she going to reveal her true identity? And most of all, why had she chosen me specifically to share her story with? I couldn't shake off the feeling that our lives were about to become intertwined in ways I never could have imagined. The next day, I made my way to the park, my heart pounding in anticipation. As I walked past the swings and slides, I spotted a figure sitting on a bench. It was her. For a moment, we just looked at each other, and I felt a shiver run down my spine as our eyes met. She beckoned me over, and I approached her cautiously, feeling like I was stepping into uncharted territory. As I sat down beside her, she took a deep breath and began to speak in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "I've been watching you," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I know it's hard for me to talk about this stuff, but my sister passed away last year. Cancer, and not just any cancer, the kind that spread so fast it left us no time to say goodbye. It was like, one minute we were planning our Christmas dinner together, and the next, she was gone." I felt a lump form in my throat as I listened to her words, feeling like I was witnessing something private and intimate. She paused for a moment, collecting herself before continuing. "I've been carrying around this guilt ever since. What if I could have done more? What if I had been there sooner? And that's when it hit me. Maybe the reason I'm paying for your groceries isn't just about making up for my own shortcomings, but also about trying to find some sense of redemption, some way to make up for not being able to save my sister. I was stunned. I had never imagined the depth of her pain, the complexity of her motivations. As we sat there in silence for a moment, I felt like I was looking at her through new eyes, seeing her not just as a mysterious benefactor, but as a fellow human being, struggling to make sense of the world. And that's when it hit me. Sometimes, the most unexpected acts of kindness are not just about helping others, they're about finding our own way forward, one small step at a time. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, and I saw her in a whole new light. I felt a pang of guilt for not having understood her sooner, for not being more perceptive about what was driving her actions. She seemed to sense my unease, because she spoke up then, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been doing this for years," she said. "Not just with you, but with others too. I've helped families in need, paid off medical bills for strangers, even donated to charity anonymously." She paused, collecting her thoughts before continuing. "It's not about making up for what happened to my sister, it's about trying to make sense of it all." I was taken aback by the scope of her generosity, and also by the sense of vulnerability that lay beneath her words. There was a fragility there, a deep sadness that seemed almost palpable. As we sat in silence again, I realized that our conversations had been like peeling back layers on an onion each time. We discovered something new about each other. And yet, despite all the secrets revealed, there were still more questions than answers. Who was this stranger? Really? What lay behind her motivations? And what would she do next? The way she spoke of my sister made me wonder if their connection went deeper than I initially thought. "What happened to your sister?" I asked. My curiosity piqued. She hesitated, collecting her thoughts before answering in a low, measured tone. "She was involved in something unsavory," she said finally. "A project that got out of hand. I'm not at liberty to discuss the details, but it ended badly for her." The way she spoke made me feel like there was more to the story, but she refused to elaborate further. As we sat in silence again, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing a crucial piece of information. Who was this woman? Really? What had driven her to pay off my medical bills and help families in need? And what connection did she have to my sister? The more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that there was a link between our situations. "Tell me something," I said, turning to face her directly. "What makes you think I'm worthy of your generosity?" She smiled wryly, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of something almost like fear in her eyes. "You're not just some random stranger who needed help," she said finally. "You have a connection to me, to what happened with my sister." The way she spoke sent shivers down my spine. What did she mean? And how was I connected to it all? As the silence between us grew thicker, I realized that our conversation had been circling around something big, something that neither of us was willing to confront head-on. But I knew that I couldn't ignore it any longer. "What are you trying to tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath before answering in a single, devastating sentence. "You're the product of her project." Her words hung in the air like a challenge, and for what felt like an eternity, I couldn't process them. What did she mean by her project? Was it some kind of science experiment gone wrong? A family secret that had been kept hidden from me all these years? The questions swirled in my head like a tornado, each one more impossible to answer than the last. I felt my mind reeling back through the memories I'd shared with my parents, conversations about my mother's past, her work as a scientist, and the countless hours she spent in her laboratory. But none of it made sense now, because what if everything I thought I knew was a lie? What if my entire life had been built on a foundation of deceit? The stranger's eyes seemed to hold a deep understanding, a knowledge that cut through all the noise in my head and landed squarely on me. She took another step closer, her voice barely above a whisper as she spoke again. "You were created as part of an experiment to see if human life could be sustained outside of a traditional family unit." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, unable to catch my breath or speak. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle into me. "My sister was one of the lead researchers on that project," she continued. "And you're the result of it all." As I tried to wrap my head around this revelation, a million questions flooded my mind, but none of them could possibly prepare me for what came next. The stranger's face began to change, her features shifting into something eerily familiar. And that was when I saw it, my own face staring back at me from hers. Her eyes locked onto mine, a deep sadness etched in their corners as she spoke again. "You're not just a result of an experiment, but also a product of, Well, let's say a creative redefinition of family ties. I felt my mind reel at the implications, but before I could ask another question, she pulled out a small folder from her bag and handed it to me. Inside, a series of photographs showed me as a child. With this stranger standing beside me, we were both smiling, oblivious to the truth that was about to upend our lives forever.